Good day, everyone. Eric Olsen from Helps YouTube Live. Welcome to our YouTube channel today on September 10th, 2025. My name is Eric Olsen, attorney for Helps, and been an attorney now 46 years. Founder of Helps, helped a lot of people that have debt problems and a lot of seniors. And my most important message to seniors that are listening or disabled persons that if you're receiving Social Security, pension, disability, or VA benefits, your income is protected. You don't need to use it to pay a debt you can't afford to pay, and you can be protected from collector harassment. There's a federal law passed in 1978 called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act that provides if you're represented by an attorney or you send what's called a cease and desist letter to a debt collector, they can no longer call or send you demand letters in them anymore. So your income is protected, it's safe, it's available for your needs, for your food and your medicine. I've been talking about this for a long time. Started Helps because I was doing a lot of bankruptcies, thousands and thousands of them, but seniors would come in and I'd tell them, you don't need to file bankruptcy. A lot of them couldn't afford to, and for other reasons, a bankruptcy didn't make sense, but I know when I sent them home, creditors were going to call and harass them. So Helps was started to take advantage of this federal law called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act so we could represent seniors to stop collector harassment. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat feature on the wherever it is on your computer, and I'll try to answer your questions. So Jimmy says, I just watched you on senior living from 3 months ago. We do videos all the time with senior living. In fact, the topic today was how debt collectors trick seniors. So uh, I thought I'd show you this. We got lots of videos on this. I talk this all the time. Here we go. Doesn't show up. Doesn't pop in. Why isn't that? Here we go. So I, I typed in this, and I came up with this video that we did quite a while ago with senior living, 5 debt collector scare tactics seniors need to know. So you can look at this one, pretty good. It's done a few years ago. Um, don't need to. Um, so I'll go over different scare tactics. There's a lot of them. Okay. Um, threats of garnishment. Debt collectors may threaten to garnish retirement benefits or Social Security, but they are legally prohibited. They can't garnish your Social Security. And that I hear all the time creditor collectors saying they can do that. They break the law when they do that. And the same thing with your pension or other forms of retirement. They can't touch your VA benefits. They can't touch other forms of retirement. So your retirement income is protected like a pension is protected. There's a federal law called ERISA passed in 1974 that protects your pension. Now, if your pension isn't qualified for ERISA, then the state law is going to protect your pension. So your Social Security and your pension can't be protected. And then they might say, well, we can get it out of your bank account. Well, in 2012, there was a rule put in effect for banks that tells banks that if they get rid of garnishment, they have to examine where the money came from in your account. And if you got money from a federal source like Social Security, then they take that monthly sum and times it times two and protect that sum in your bank, even if some of the money in your bank account came from another source. So, I'll always ask people, do you ever have more than twice the amount of your Social Security in your bank account? And they'll say no, nothing to worry about. Now, if you had more than that in there, you can normally get that released by filing a challenge to garnishment or claim exemption. But you prevent that problem by just keeping less than twice the amount of your Social Security in your bank account. Okay? Um, but you don't even have to worry about it unless you're sued, and you may never get sued. Okay? What about state pensions and IRAs? Yes, protected. Okay. I could think of an exception if you owed, if you got a state pension and then you owed taxes to that particular state where your pension came from. They might have made the state may have made an exception for them to get some of the money out of your state pension. I think I recall that happening maybe in California, but that would be really an odd situation. Okay, but they can't touch IRAs or 401ks; they're protected. When a person is younger than a senior and they want to file bankruptcy and not on Social Security that they own a home, do they have to file the home on that or just certain? Well, when you file a bankruptcy, you list all your debts. But if you've got a secured debt like a home mortgage, then you're just going to keep making that mortgage payment. You wouldn't lose the home. Okay. Um, Now, if you had equity over and above the homestead exemption, then there could be a problem. Maybe that would be a reason why you wouldn't file bankruptcy, or you'd have to go into a different type of bankruptcy. But that's getting kind of in the weeds. Um, our our clients, we'll talk to someone about bankruptcy, but normally they don't need to. In fact, today, I'll skip ahead. I had a guy call about his mom and dad, and they're going to call back with his mom and dad later, and wanted to know about bankruptcy for his parents. I think they lived in Kentucky, and they had a home that was free and clear that they owed no money on. It was free and clear, worth about I don't know, $250,000. Now I'm not sure I forget what the homestead exemption is in Kentucky, but it's less than that. And they were talking about filing bankruptcy. I said that could be a problem, and then he says, "Well, a couple of years ago we put an irrevocable trust on the home." Okay, I said that wouldn't matter. In bankruptcy, a trustee can look back 2 years to see if you transferred an asset. And then under state law, if you made a transfer of an asset, even to an irrevocable trust, and when you owed a bunch of money to creditors, uh, that could be 4 or 5 or 6, even 6 years, depending on the state, they could undo the irrevocable trust. I said, probably wouldn't be a good idea. They didn't need to, where a private collector who got a judgment would never go into that. They would never do that. So they're going to call back. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes. What would you do about a person coming to my door to sign a garnishment? Is that illegal? Well, they usually don't come to your door for a garnishment. That's, a garnishment is served on like a bank. Okay, it just goes in the mail, or an employer. It's not served on you. You might get a copy in the mail after they've done it, but if someone's knocking on your door to give you legal papers, it's probably you've been sued, or maybe some other follow-up paperwork, and you don't need to sign it. And what we tell our clients is, if you get legal paperwork, you get a copy to us. We'll explain to you what it is. Okay. So to get back to what we were talking about, how collectors trick seniors, they threaten garnishment when they really can't do it. Sometimes they're going to threaten to sue you, even when they don't intend to sue you. And they might use complex legal language to confuse a senior. Yeah, that happens. Well, if you don't pay this debt, I'm afraid we're going to have to file a lawsuit and do other interrogatories and other, use some big words to try to scare you. Their whole goal is to try to get you to make arrangements to make payments. They can be aggressive in their communication, make a lot of phone calls. They can talk in an aggressive manner, try to wear you down, and so that you'll make some arrangements to pay them. give them access to your bank account so you pay them $50, $100 a month, $200 a month, anything they can to get you to pay. Okay, they're not obligated to tell you that your income is protected, and you don't have to pay the debt. They don't have to do that. They can be deceptive about the debt. Like, for example, maybe the debt was a credit card owed by your husband. He passed away, and now they call you and say, well, you need to pay this debt when you're not legally obligated to pay it, or another type of debt. We see that happening. Now, sometimes people say, well, Eric, the statute of limitations has passed. They can't come after me for the debt. Well, there is a statute of limitations in states, depending on the state law, that limits when they can file a lawsuit. But statute of limitations doesn't prevent them from trying to collect a debt that's beyond the statute of limitations. They could still call and talk to you. They just legally can't threaten a lawsuit. So they do that. And then the last one, that exploiting legal knowledge. You know, if you owe debt, you probably don't know a lot about your rights. Um, but these collectors, that's what they do all day long, is trying to collect debt. And so they get pretty expert. They get trained on how to exploit your lack of knowledge about your rights, especially how your income is protected and your assets are protected. And that's what they do. And they do that all day long. Okay. Um, Marty's going to ask me, he says, Eric, what if I got all this debt when I was working? Then when my wife passed away, I went on Social Security, so I'm still all right. They can't touch my Social Security. That's right. They can't touch your Social Security, period. Okay. When people enroll in helps, okay, if you got a question, listen to me later. You can always call us on the phone. We'll go over this with you, explain to you what your rights are. If you want to enroll, you can do that. Sometimes people call us 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times or even more before they decide they need our help. I'm going to ask you some basic questions. But the whole purpose of helps, when we represent someone, we represent them forever. That means if you ever have a question, if you're concerned or worried, you pick up the phone and you call. I talked to a lady earlier today. I think she enrolled in 2019, 6 years ago. And something came up. She had a question. We talked to her. I talked to her for quite a while. Didn't have anything to worry about. But she was very thankful that she always had someone she could call if she was worried. Helps was founded to deal with worrywarts, specifically people that worry, so that they could always have someone to call and they wouldn't have to worry about having to pay a fee to talk to this guy. You can call as often as you need to. I know that some people worry more than others. And I've said this many times. My pet peeve, if someone calls me and they say, I'm sorry to bother you. I know you were busy, but I've been really worried. No, if you're worried, you call us. That's what we're here for. You won't necessarily need to speak with me. We've got other excellent attorneys and paralegals are going to be able to help you and answer your question. So this person coming to your neighbor's door, it could have been for a gazillion reasons. You don't need to be scared about it. If they deliver papers to you, you can send us a copy. We'll look at them and call you and explain you what they mean. Okay. So this person contacts us from Ohio and they say, I'm 67-year old, 2 years retired. I'm receiving Social Security, cancer survivor. She's engaged. Congratulations. Fiance is 70 years old and he receives Social Security also. And we want to get married, she says. However, our credit scores are so low, both in the upper 400s. It's hard for us to obtain decent housing. He drives and has a high car note. I had to give back my car due to not being able to make the note. My fiance has a number of health issues and his insurance doesn't cover a lot of his meds. We go to food banks for food when we can't go out to eat. I've also gotten myself in debt trying to help my fiance keep his bills paid. Please help us so we can get married and find housing. I want to be Cupid. I want to help you get married. I'm going to tell him you don't need to pay. Your fiance doesn't need to pay that debt. His Social Security is protected. You don't need to pay your debt. We have a program, seven steps to a 720 credit score, how to rebuild your credit. But even when it's not perfect, you'll be able to rent a place. We'll be able to tell you. We have what's called a landlord letter that explains to a prospective landlord that even though you may have poor credit, all your income, your Social Security is protected by law. Now, we might be telling you, did he have an expensive car payment? It might make sense to, yeah, he's got a high car note. It may not make sense to keep the car. You can let it go back. Well, what are you going to do about transportation? Well, sometimes you can buy pretty cheap cars for $1,500 or $2,000 on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. There's a lot of things we talk about. It helps. We not only protect you from debt collectors, we educate people how to maintain their financial independence. If that includes make it so you can get married, find love in your old age, sure, we want to do that. I've got myself in debt trying to help my fiance keep his bills. You don't need to do that anymore. Neither of you need to pay the debt. I've said this before. Years ago, my little brother, who's 14 years younger than me, who's an attorney who I hired out of law school. Now he runs the former law firm bankruptcy firm. He's better at it than me. We talked one time about all the couples that met with us, and I remember he told me, he said, Eric, he said, I think we've saved more marriages than any marriage counselor anywhere. And I told him, I think you're right, because a lot of married couples would have marriage problems because of debt. And they'd come into him and we'd answer their problems and be able to file bankruptcy for them, tell them why they didn't need to worry, and all this pressure went away. So no, we want to help people. Okay. Um, does help have lawyers from every state? No, we don't need to. We don't represent people in court. Uh, we don't technically give legal advice. We give legal information. We tell people what their rights are. You're protected. We represent seniors under a federal law called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. That provides that if you're represented by an attorney, a debt collector can't call or send you demand letters. They have to communicate with us, and that's what we do. When you enroll, you give us the collectors you owe money to, we send them a cease and desist letter out. We don't represent you in court. If you get sued, we're going to tell you what your rights are, why you don't need to go to court. I mean, you can choose to go to court, but you don't need to. They can get a judgment they can't collect from you. So, no, we don't need to be attorneys from. See, if you owe debt and you owe a creditor in some state, you can get a debt collection demand letter from an attorney that doesn't practice law in your state. The law provides that a debt collector attorney can send a demand letter to anyone in the country, even if he's not a member of that state. Tell him you got to pay this debt. And so, by the same token, helps can send a cease and desist letter saying, "Hey, this person's income is protected; they can't afford to pay the debt." So we help people everywhere. Happy Girl says, I have a judgment. They sent me paperwork for aid in enforcement of judgment, written discovery. I'm responding and sending my paperwork to lawyers. They can't take my Social Security. No. So I don't know what state you're calling from. Sometimes we call that a fact information sheet from Florida. Maybe this is, different states have different rules sometimes after there's a judgment that the attorney can send to a senior who they got a judgment against, and that letter won't explain to the person they send it to about their protected assets or their protected income. And so when you get that, you can be intimidated and scared and call that attorney to try to make arrangements and payments to make payments because you're afraid they're going to take something from you. Now we go over that, people that are part of helps, we go over that with you. Can when considering relocating to another country, can the president deny our Social Security benefits if not received and spent on U.S. soil? No. I don't know where you got that idea. No. In fact, I was reading a little bit today. You know, in the past, before 2018, they were, if you owed a past due student loan, they could offset 15% of your Social Security to pay the student loan. And then we were part of a lawsuit that stopped that. And then that case finally got dismissed after COVID, long time, 5 years later. And then this last May, the administration said that they were going to start the process to take 15% of people's Social Security that owed student loans. And I did a video on it. I did a video with Senior Living, and I told them, I said, I'm not sure that's going to last. I said, there's going to be some pressure. Sure enough, first part of June, the Department of Education announced, no, we're not going to do that. They suspended it. They said, we may do it in the fall. I've talked about this before. I've got a stinking suspicion they may never do it. They may. I won't know what to do when they do. It's just like, I don't. We don't get political here, but I know Trump has a kind of thing about Social Security that it shouldn't be touched. You know, so maybe I don't think there's going to be a problem with Social Security. There's going to be a garnishment of Social Security for 15% of Social Security for people that owe student loans. I don't think it's going to happen, but it may, and if it does, hopefully there should be a program like there was before to get on an income-based repayment plan. If your income's low enough, you won't have to pay that student loan. Yeah, so what Sunset is saying is that, you know, SSI is not real, it's Social Security, but it's more like a welfare benefit. It's if you didn't pay enough money into Social Security, it's the real minimum. But regular Social Security, right? Um, I'm in California. What are your law firm hours? I think from 8 to 5, something like that. As I understand it, regular Social Security can be spent much. Well, it comes in dollars, so if you get the Social Security wherever you're at in the world, it's going to come to you in dollars. Mike B says, "Hi Eric, I live in Alabama. Have a lot of credit card debt. I now can't pay. Can they take my home if it's paid off, or my vehicle?" Okay, I've told this, and if you've heard me regularly, you know what I'm going to say. So every state has an exemption laws that protect maybe a certain amount of equity in a home or a certain amount of equity in a car. Okay. But it is simply not the practice of consumer judgment creditors. If someone sued you for a credit card and got a judgment, even if you had a home that had equity way over the homestead exemption where you live, they don't go after your home for a lot of different reasons. And they're not going to go after your car. They simply don't do it. Okay? Um, for example, maybe the home was owned by you and your wife. The judgment is just against the husband. It's too complicated. Or maybe you got a home that's worth 300,000 and you owe 200,000. And the homestead exemption, let's say it's 50,000. Well, if the home's worth 300,000, it would cost 20 or 30,000 to sell it. They'd have to pay off 200,000 to the lender plus 50,000 to your homestead exemption. Maybe they get 10,000. They're not going to do that. They're not set up to do that. So a lot of different reasons we just don't see that happening. And I know I'm 74, been doing this for going on 5 decades now. No, you don't need to worry about. And they're not going to take your car. Now, if you owe money to the lender that loaned you money on the car and they have the title, that's a different matter. And the same thing if you have a mortgage, you don't pay the mortgage payment. But I'm talking about your general debt creditors you owe money to. Could there be an exception? I suppose so. I don't see it. If the exception would be maybe if you owe money to some vindictive relative who had a lot of money to hire someone to try to churn, but we don't even see that happening. Okay. So you shouldn't worry, Mike, on that kind of thing. You can call and we'll talk to you and go over this. And there's other things that can be done. So this person, they wrote in this. I don't know if this was to one of our videos or something. They said, "What if a bank stole over $200 out of our checking account one month and said they were allowed to do it? We volunteered to have a vehicle returned. The bank was trying to charge us monthly payments for it. We are a disability over 62." So I don't know. I suspect this person may have been banking with a credit union. I'll talk as though it was a credit union. If you made a loan with a credit union and you stop making the car payment and let it go back, and you also bank with the credit union, unbeknownst to you, whether you realize it or not, you signed an agreement with the credit union allowing them to offset money out of your bank account to pay a debt that you were behind on. And if you had an agreement to pay them $200 a month and they repossess the car, they're still going to take that $200 a month out. So if you owe money to a credit union, you have a car loan that you're not going to pay, or you stop paying, you're going to want to change to go to a different banking institution. Now, Truist Bank would be the same way, but not regular banks. They don't have those kind of agreements. Okay, that's kind of an odd situation. I'm guessing at what this person happened to this person. Okay, this person contacts us and they say, I'm almost 70, widowed, disabled. I have property taxes. He owes money on, get Social Security. I enrolled in a debt consolidation company. I pay them and they negotiate my debt. I pay them $436 a month. My credit is ruined. I receive Meals on Wheels. I have medical issues here, he talks about. I just don't make enough money to pay anything. Medical tests, doctor bills, medicine. So if I fire the consolidation company, yeah, you need to fire them. Will my credit card company take the only asset I have, a small camper? I need to know. No, they're not going to touch your camper. No, no. I don't care if it's worth $20,000. They're not going to touch your camper. And you can, when you enroll with a debt management or debt settlement company or debt consolidation company, first question I'm going to ask you, when you enrolled with them, did they tell you that your Social Security was protected and you didn't need to pay the debt? And you know what your answer is going to be? No, Eric, they never told me that. Well, why didn't they tell you that? If they would have told you that, you would have known you didn't need to enroll with them, and you could have been able to save the $436 a month you've been paying to them. You'll have that money with which to pay these property taxes that you say you owe. Okay, but you say your only asset is the camper. Now, if you have these questions we're talking about, be sure and call us. We'll talk to you, be able to help you and talk to you. You can call several times. You can look at other of our videos. You can look at our webpage. We don't want you to be concerned. Okay. Uh, Lita asked, I owe $800 on this loan. They are collecting $518 a month to pay it back. I paid them once. Now I'm not paying them, but they keep on texting, calling me for payment. Well, what should I do? Well, I don't know what the loan is, but if you're income, Social Security, or pension, you don't need to do anything. How do you get them to stop texting? I mean, you can't send us. See, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act is that applies to debt collectors, not an original creditor. The exception in 7 states, but um, if they're texting you or calling you, you don't need to talk to them. If you're enrolled in helps, you give us that credit. We're going to send them a cease and desist letter. No need to worry. So a sister called for her sister who lives in um, a southern state. And she said, my sister has the beginnings of dementia. She says she owes around $30,000 in debt. Her income is $2,200, Social Security, and a small pension. We talked to a lot of sons and daughters, sisters, brothers who watch out for family, which is really kind of sweet. I love it when that happens. Okay, and she owes 50,000 on her home and it's worth about 300,000. Oh yeah, I think I remember talking to this person. She got power of attorney for her. So the homestead in New Mexico, no, I said this state, it's $150,000. So she's got equity. That would prevent her from filing bankruptcy. She can't bankrupt on it. And what did I tell her? I said, well, if you're helping your sister out, one thing you can do is, and are you helping her with the debt? She says, yeah. Okay, change the phone number for your sister so she doesn't get calls. She gets a cell phone. Get her a different cell phone number. It's not the end of the world. That way the creditors can't call her. Um, and we talked about probably needing to sell the home at some point because the sister simply couldn't afford to make the home payment and may need to live in a facility. Um, and then they could use the proceeds. The sister could help her by using the proceeds of the home sale plus her existing Social Security to pay for her care in a facility. And then when it gets paid down enough, under 2,000, then she can get on Medicaid that will continue to pay for her care in that facility. And I explained to her that if she goes into a facility, she wants to make sure she goes into a place that will eventually accept a Medicaid patient. Because if a facility has one Medicaid patient in their facility, then if another person in their facility is no longer able to pay the full fee, then they have to accept Medicaid. Okay. Okay. So this person calls. It's a wife. My spouse has heart failure since 2022. He was in the building trades, and they were getting ready to build a new home. But because of this heart issue, he became fatigued and he couldn't do it. And they stopped paying credit card debt a year ago last May. And she says, now 2 credit card companies are taking me to court. I saw your company on YouTube and would like to find out about your services ASAP. If you're in that type of situation, you can always call and talk to us. You can look at our webpage down here, wherever it is, www.helpsushere.org, or look at our YouTube videos and call us on the phone. We'll go over your situation. So her husband's old enough; he's getting Social Security. It's protected. I'm sure she's getting Social Security. She doesn't need to worry about paying the debt. What about these lawsuits? Don't need to worry. They can get a judgment. They're not going to be able to touch your Social Security or pension or your other assets. You're going to be fine. I'm sure you're going to be fine. But we'll go over your situation. And if you want our help, we will represent you. So these creditors have to leave you alone. And then you can always have someone to call and talk to if you're worried or scared about a particular thing. Okay? That's what we're here for. I'm being sued for a credit card debt. They're trying to garnish my bank account. Well, okay, they can't garnish you until, number one, they have a judgment. Okay? And then if you're getting Social Security and someone has sued you and does have a judgment, as long as you keep the balance in your bank account less than twice the amount of Social Security that you get each month, that particular account is protected up to that sum by your bank without you having to do anything. So if you got $1,500 in Social Security, times 2 would be $3,000 in your bank account. It's protected from garnishment. So what we would tell you that if you had multiple bank accounts, just have one account. You don't need multiple bank accounts. Have one account into which your Social Security goes. That's protected. Not to worry. Now, do you have to call your bank and tell them that? No. If you ask this question of your bank manager, he's not going to know the answer because that's not his area that he deals with. There's a department in the bank that deals with garnishments. And the rule that protects your bank account was put into effect in 2012. And there's a department in the bank that deals with garnishments, and they understand the rule. I have yet to talk to a bank manager that yet understands this rule. I've talked to a lot of them since 2012. Sometimes they'll give people wrong information. And whatever you do not need to call your bank and try to verify this information. It will frustrate you and it will frustrate the person you're calling. But you could Google that question and there'll be other websites that will pop up that will confirm what I'm telling you here. Yeah, you can press the like button. Subscribe to our channel. I think more people find out about helps from our YouTube videos than any other source. So the more people share this information, more people find it. And I talk to people all the time. We do. That just happened upon our video. And it changes everything for them. You see, there's a concerted effort, I'm firmly in belief of that, of debt collectors and creditors and people that help people with their debt, even these nonprofit debt management companies, to keep this particular information away from you. They don't want you to know this. The National Council on Aging, they get $50 million from the government each year, and their motto is to protect seniors, especially those that are suffering financially. Do they ever tell seniors this stuff? No. No, they steer them toward debt management. They steer them toward nonprofit debt management companies. Well, nonprofit debt management companies, if they told seniors their income was protected, they wouldn't be able to enroll the seniors and make money. So they don't tell the seniors the truth. There's a few exceptions. There's one in particular that refers cases to us. Bless their hearts, they're doing the right thing. So that's the way it is, unfortunately. And then there's AARP. AARP. Our clients don't belong to AARP. AARP helps the seniors that have money. The half of seniors that don't have money, they don't enroll with AARP because they don't have enough money to use their help. So this person contacts us from Maryland, 67 years old, with cancer, deceased spouse. They get military retirement. I have credit cards and missed some payments. Now they are charging me 29.4% interest, so I can never pay off the debt. I paid off my house in 2024. The deed is in my name. What can I do now? I no longer am able to use my credit cards. I have fear of death, and I take multiple medications. So I have some fog on my memory. My daughter is my power of attorney, so her name is on my bank account in case of emergency. What do I do next? Call with your daughter, or call yourself, and we'll explain to you what your rights are, why you're going to be okay. You may want to add your daughter's name to your home. May not. You can. You're going to be okay. They're not going to be able to touch your Social Security, your military requirement. It's going to be protected. And they're not going to take your home. You're going to be fine. If this is anything at all like your situation, please call us so we can go over this and bring some peace back to your life so you don't worry. I don't care if they charge 29.4% interest or 99% interest. You're not going to need to pay that credit card debt. If you get sued, you're not going to need to go to court. You're going to be okay. Yeah, most questions just ask Google. That's right. Except the problem is, you know, like artificial intelligence, it relies a lot on what's out there on the internet. And if no one talks about this stuff, then a lot of times the answer to the questions aren't going to tell you the answers that I'm giving you. That's why like I said, there's a concerted effort by these debt collectors and creditors trying to collect money. They don't want seniors to know their income's protected. So this person contacts us. They say, I had a stroke in 2021. I lost my job. Now they have fair credit. They got a new furnace from a state program. I don't have any air conditioning. My house needs lots of repairs. I can't get any help. Please help me in any way or guide me in the right direction. You know, sometimes I read some of these things and I think, I talked about this before recently, and if I did, I apologize. But a lot of the things we talk about over and over again. So if the home is free and clear, we might be talking to them about possibly looking at a reverse mortgage that could give them some money to fix up the home the way they want it. They still own the home. They don't have to make a payment. Sometimes I'll mention a reverse mortgage and people say, I don't want that. I'll ask them why, and they can't give me a reason. They just don't understand it. Reverse mortgage is not an answer for everyone, but for certain persons, it can be an answer to prayer. Um, so we'll talk to this person, answer their questions, and hopefully be able to help them. Okay, here's one. I like this one. I have two cards with the same bank. Both are maxed out. One is being charged off but I pay the other one on time. Would the bank, knowing that if they cancel out the one card, also cancel out the card being paid on time, actually go ahead and cancel it, which is like them cutting their own nose off, being that they're still collecting interest on me on the other one card? I answered them. I think this was a response on a question on one of our YouTube videos, on a comment. I'd be shocked if they didn't cut the good card off. If you have a card you're not going to pay, it's backed by one bank, and you don't pay it, it's practice for them to cut off any other card you have backed by the same bank, even if you happen to be current on that card and you owe a lot of money on that card. Now, I suppose there could be an exception, but that's my experience. They're going to cut you off. At the very least, they would cut you so that you don't have any more extra credit with them, so you couldn't use the card anymore. And you say, well, aren't they acting against their own safe interests if they terminate that other card? Yeah, it would seem that way, but it's just the way they do it. When people enroll with Helps, when they call us, one of the questions we're going to ask them is, do you have a credit card with a small balance or nothing is owed that you still want to keep? And a lot of times the answer will be yes. And then we'll say, well, as long as that credit card isn't backed by another credit card, a bank by another, or with another, by a bank that has another credit card you're not going to pay, you'd be able to keep that credit card. Banks don't care if your other debts are behind as long as they're getting paid. But if you had a credit card that you're not going to pay and you want to keep another credit card, they're going to shut them both off. Okay. So this person asked on a question on one of our videos. They said, "What about if I owe the IRS $70,000?" And I think this was on another video with another company. I said, many lower or modest income seniors can qualify for currently not collectible status with the IRS. Yeah, if you're a married couple and $3,500 or less, maybe even a little bit more, you can often qualify for currently not collectible with the IRS and not have to pay the tax. If you're single, it's about $2,500 or less. Now, the lower your income is, the easier it is to get on currently not collectible status. Jimmy says Synchrony Bank is notorious for cutting off your cards if you default on another of their cards. That's right. Yeah, they'll do that. Synchrony Bank backs a lot of department store cards. Now, if you don't know, all you need to do is search on the internet what bank card covers American or Harbor Freight, or what bank card covers Home Depot, what bank card covers Lowe's, or whatever. Then you can find out if you have another credit card that's backed by that bank. The person writes in and says, I'm struggling to pay my debts. I'm 65 years old. I lost my job a couple years ago. I retired and took on part-time work. I had to quit my part-time work because of health issues. I applied for disability a couple years ago. Or a year ago. So I'm still waiting on my determination. I'm drowning in debt. My medical expenses are significant because of my health. My Social Security check will be further reduced by my health insurance premiums. I live in Florida. My home is paid off, and so is my car, but I have about $30,000 in credit card debt and personal loans. I'm afraid that pretty soon I'll be faced with multiple judgments. Every month I find my bank account on overdraft. Can you help? What can I do? Well, you can stop paying the credit card debt. You don't need to pay it anymore. You said your home is paid off. You live in Florida. They can't take your home. Okay. So and if you don't want to deal with the collectors harassing you, call us on the phone. If you enroll in helps, you're going to give us the creditors you owe money to. We're going to send them a cease and desist letter. They're going to leave you alone. Now, if your Social Security isn't enough for you to make it and you got a free and clear home that's worth quite a bit, we might suggest you to look at possibly getting a reverse mortgage that could give you a little bit of extra money, and you could choose to take just a little bit each month out of that reverse mortgage if you wanted to. You still own the home. You could still choose to sell it. You wouldn't necessarily have to do that, but I mean, if it was a choice between having to move and get rid of the home and having enough money to be able to stay there, then maybe a reverse mortgage could make sense. So Miss H talks about tomorrow. Our show is later tomorrow. It's 2 hours later on Thursdays. But a lot of people watch us later. They watch the repeat. So this person contacts us. I don't know from where. They give us the name. It says I'm a senior citizen who is 25,000 in debt with credit cards. Last year I enrolled with a debt relief program, and I'm still struggling. I'm thinking about bankruptcy, but my income is tight. I'm overwhelmed. I called a debt relief program to let them know about my concerns. I own my home and receive pension from a job and Social Security from G's husband. I fear of losing my home because possible lawsuits if I cancel their debt program. You won't lose your home. When you signed up with the debt relief program of the debt settlement company, did they tell you that your income was protected? I can guarantee the answer is going to be no, they didn't tell her that. Why didn't they tell her that? Because if they would have told her that, she would have realized she didn't need to enroll with them and they wouldn't be making money off her. These people are scammers. The profit and the nonprofit one both are. If they don't tell you that you're a senior citizen about your protected income, they're not giving you the complete truth. And they don't. And they continue to get referred by National Council on Aging and other nonprofits entities say, contact a nonprofit debt management or debt management company. The problem is people are referring them to the wolf who won't. Now they may do great for younger people that could be garnished, but not for seniors. They don't tell them the truth. I could go on and on about that. I'm sorry. Yeah, we just got a few more minutes, but I go to the bitter end here. If you have questions, put them in the chat feature. Otherwise, you can put them in the comments or you can call us on our phone number below. This person writes in and says, I'm 60 years old and living on SSI alone. That means they get very minimal Social Security. It's not regular Social Security. It says, I had financial difficulties and fell into a predatory loan. I cannot keep up on the loan. I can't pay them. I'm using money I need to live on. What can I do? I can't sleep at night. I'm scared because I know they will eventually sue me. You don't need to be worried. They can't take your Social Security. You're not going to have to go to court if you get sued. You don't need to worry. Now, this person's income's low enough that probably call help, so you get our help for free. You can stop paying that debt. These payday loan people or these high interest lenders, when it comes to seniors, they just take advantage by not telling you the truth. They're never going to tell you about your rights. Call us on the phone. You don't need to continue with this anymore. Yeah, your 403B should be protected. I'm not worried about that. And retirement investment accounts are protected. There might be a retirement form that's technically not protected yet, but I haven't met that person yet or that retirement yet. And a debt collector who sued you and have a judgment, they don't have time to investigate that kind of stuff. It won't be a problem, Tweebird. Here's one. I like this one. What does a debt collector lawyer need when they make a hardship request? Or when you make a hardship request? Well, there is no, I know sometimes they talk about hardship requests as though there is a formal hardship request. Well, there is no such thing as a hardship request. There's, I mean, but you talk about something long enough, it kind of gets a life of its own. There's no law in effect that says you can ask for a hardship request. I suppose a person could tell a creditor, I've got a hardship, but creditors, if half of seniors have income to 200% of the poverty line and they're the ones owing the debt, if they started giving a hardship request out to every senior that asked for one, pretty soon they wouldn't be able to collect anything. They're not going to do that. But yet the word gets out saying hardship request. So this might be the last one I talk about today. Now remember, tomorrow it's 2 hours later, but we still have it Monday through Thursday. Due to some health issues, person says, and rising medical costs, I'm going to have to surrender an RV and vehicle back to the credit union. Where can I legally cancel the insurance on these? Well, okay, if you're not going to drive the car or drive the RV, if it's just going to park it, just call up the insurance company and cancel it. The credit union's going to get that notice right away. Now, do you call then you wait for the credit union to call you when the income's behind, and then you can tell them you're not going to keep it anymore and come pick it up. If you try to call them while you're current on the payment, you're going to frustrate yourself and you're going to frustrate them. You got to be behind, and it's better to have them call you, because then the person that calls you, they're going to know what to do. But I don't want you to cancel the insurance if you're going to legally still drive it, because then you could have a problem with your driver's license. Okay, so it's been an hour, and I want to thank you for participating. Remember, tomorrow it's 2 hours later. If you have any more questions, you can put comments in the comment or ask questions in the comment. We try to look at those and answer those. Or you can always call us at the number below, 855-435-7787. Important thing to remember is you're going to be okay. You don't need to worry. You can always call helps. If you're a client, you can call us all the time. If you're a prospective client, you can call us many times as you need until you're satisfied that we can help you, and then we can enroll you. We enroll you over the phone. Just takes a couple minutes. All we need is your name, address, last 4 digits of your social security number, month you were born, and then we can click a button and you're enrolled immediately. You give us the creditors you owe money to. So you can enroll immediately on the phone, and that way when we hang up the phone, if a creditor were to call you, tell your representative by help, you give them a number, and they start calling us, not you. So God bless, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye.